Okay, Bismillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala ashraf al-mursaleen. Sayyidina wa habibina Mawlana Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana. Allahumma 'allimna ma yanfa'una wa zidna 'ilma ya muqallib al-qulub. Thabbit qulubana ala dinik. Amin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, all praise and thanks be to Allah Ta'ala. Salutations upon our beloved Messenger Sayyidina Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May Allah bless and guide our class. Allahu Ameen. I think just for the online students, can I just check that you are able to hear me okay and see me okay? And maybe some of you can just say hello so I can make sure I can hear you as well.
Yes, we can.
Okay, can someone else say hello as well? Because it was very, very soft.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum salam. Assalamualaikum. Captain, assalamu alaikum.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Cape Town, loud and clear.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So, Bismillah, I think before we start, I'm just going to ask the in-class students just to introduce themselves, and then we will proceed from there, inshallah ta'ala. Maybe the online students, you can just pop into the chat and just maybe just share your name, and you can share where you are from in the chat. It also gives me context to know who's who in the room. Okay, just okay, I'll ask the chat. Okay, so our brother.
From here.
Okay, brother Dawood Mutala. Okay. Brother Dawood, can I ask, what were you looking to get out of today's course?
I found the topic really interesting.
Okay.
Perspective.
Okay. Okay, inshallah ta'ala, barakallah. Alhamdulillah. Bismillah. And any expectations for the course?
Just to learn something and benefit from it.
Alhamdulillah, barakallah.
Mariam, we slow down the road actually.
Okay, mashallah.
We would already expected many months ago. So grateful to be here.
Alhamdulillah, barakallah. Online students, can I ask, in your view, are there any specific expectations that you are looking forward to get out of this course? Any like specific questions or things that you want from this course?
In terms of the LGBTQT, I'm very interested to see what you're going to tell us about it. Especially, I'm looking at the challenges that Cape Town has, and you have more experience in that aspect from there. So looking forward.
Inshallah ta'ala.
Because aside from the other aspects, which is the what are the other two things I will go at down small.
Okay, we'll come to it, inshallah.
Yeah.
Inshallah. Okay, back to the online students. I'd like to hear from you. Are there any specific expectations from the online students in terms of, are there any questions you're looking at getting answered? Any specific expectations? Online students, you're welcome to join and participate, inshallah. I can't lecture for 3 hours, so you must come. You must talk to me as well. Let me ask someone specifically. Sister Mariam, do you mind if I ask you any expectations for this course or any questions? I also put the presentation online. Eh? Oh, sorry. Oh, you're on Zoom as well. Okay. Okay. Brother, mashallah, assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. What's the name, brother? Muhammad Faisal. Mashallah, Muhammad Faisal. We're asking Muhammad, any expectations for the course or any specific questions or the reason you were interested in joining?
this will be and our you kind of more or less this more beautiful towards Allah, towards Yabaz, and this is why specifically putting on this definitely.
Inshallah. Okay. Barakallah. Good to have you, mashallah. Barakallah. Okay, Bismillah. Mujahid, you can just give our brothers the, if you guys can just follow on Zoom on this. You're making a plan now? Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, so Bismillah. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think just a bit for the students who maybe are new to Mizan Institute. We an institute based in Cape Town. We've running for about 13 years now. And we all students of Malata Al-Quran, rahimahullah. And I think the focus really is trying to bridge the gap between the Islamic sciences and the Islamic legacy and the Muslim community and modern times and all the difficult questions that we face. And I think that we try to basically address those questions and try to speak about those topics quite a bit. So we have a once a week class in Cape Town. It's all online. And there's two main focuses. The one focus is to teach students to understand the Quran directly in the Arabic language. And through the Quran also, all of these topics are discussed because the Quran speaks about life. And so all these topics are discussed through the journey. And then we also have lots of short courses on fiqh and aqidah and courses like this that we run. And that's basically Mizan Institute. And alhamdulillah, we're also hosted by Ilm SA as a co-host. And they will be having a female workshop tomorrow, inshallah. It will be live on Hilal TV from 9 till 6. So you are welcome to also join them, inshallah ta'ala. So they're also a co-host of the program with Sister Fatima, alhamdulillah. So Bismillah, I think let's start. And I think I want to start at what the Prophet ﷺ said about our times. So what did the Prophet ﷺ said about our times? And then this presentation is also available on the WhatsApp group. So you'll get all the copies, but you're welcome to make additional notes on the presentation. So Bismillah. So in a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, "Yushikul umamu an tada'a alaykum." Soon, the nations, not the Muslim nations, the other nations, they will invite each other, alaykum, upon you, the Muslim nation. كما تداعى الأكلة إلى قصعتها. Like an animal of prey is inviting other people to its meal. So the Prophet ﷺ is saying there will come a time where the other nations will invite each other to basically feast on the Muslims, consume the Muslims. And for me, the first part of this hadith is like a manifestation of what's happening at the moment in Gaza, is that there are a number of nations supporting basically the destruction of the people of Gaza. And then the Sahabi said something. He said, قَالَ قَائِلٌ وَمِنْ قِلَّةٍ نَحْنُ يَوْمَئِذٍ. He says, because we're going to be so few Muslims at that time that they're able to come and consume us and feast on us. قَالَ, then he sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, بَلْ أَنْتُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ كَثِيرٌ. Rather on that day you'll be kathir, you'll be many. وَلَكِنَّكُمْ غُثَاءٌ كَغُثَاءِ السَّيْلِ. But you're going to be like the froth and the white foam of the sea. Like when the waves break, you have a little bit of foam. So you're going to be kathir, you're going to be in our billions now, but you're going to be like the white froth of the sea. لَيَنْزَعَنَّ اللَّهُ مِنْ صُدُورِ عَدُوِّكُمُ الْمَهَابَةَ مِنْكُمْ. Allah will remove from the hearts of your enemy any fear of you. Your enemy, the enemies of Islam, will have no fear of the Muslims, even though they will be abundant. And I think for me, we've reached such a low point in the Ummah that in the lands of the Muslims, in the lands of Umar, our brothers and sisters and our sons and daughters can be killed with impunity. And the Muslims, they're surrounded by Muslim countries, surrounded by their brothers and sisters, and they're just looking on. All of us are just looking on. And I think it's a serious low point for the Ummah, that we can just be so helpless. There's not even a finger lifted. And all we are reduced to is beggars at the door of the oppressor, asking him to stop oppressing us. There's almost like no power for us to actually stop the oppression. We become beggars at the doors of the oppressors, protesting and marching, asking them to stop. And it's a good thing, obviously, we have to do it. We have to protest and march, but that's the state we're in. If we were in a proper state, we'd go and we'd remove the oppressor. We'd stop the oppression. That's how the Muslims should be. But we've come, we're so weak that this hadith is manifest now. And there's no fear of the oppressor. They have no fear that the Arab states or the Muslim states are going to come defend the Palestinians. There's absolutely zero fear. There's zero fear. Then the Prophet ﷺ says, لَيَقْذِفَنَّ اللَّهُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمُ الْوَهْنِ. Allah will cast into the hearts of the believers wahan. Wahan is like weakness. فَقَالَ قَائِلٌ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ وَمَا الْوَهْنِ? What is this wahan, this weakness that the Muslims will have? And he ﷺ says, قَالَ حُبُّ الدُّنْيَا وَكَرَاهِيَةُ الْمَوْتِ. Love and attachment to this world and dislike of death. The source of the weakness is that the believers are so attached to this world, so attached to materialism, so attached to entertainment, and so scared of death and meeting Allah Ta'ala, it will render them completely weak. So this is the state we find ourselves. So in this state here, what is the condition that the Prophet ﷺ is mentioning about the Muslims? What's the condition? What's the condition he's mentioning about the Muslims? What's he saying the problem is? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Okay, materialism, good. Materialism, is materialism a lack of faith? When I'm asking the questions, online students, you can either answer by unmuting, or you can answer by in the chat as well. But if you can participate with your voice as well, that will be good as well, inshallah. Okay. So the one thing is materialism lack of faith? Can you believe in Allah and be materialistic? Can you believe in Allah and be materialistic? Yes. So the point I want to make is that faith is one thing, and attachment to this world and materialism is a different thing. Okay, so you're with me. Just hold that thought. It's going to manifest now into the paradigm, inshallah. Okay, so that's going to be the first one. The second one, the second narration, is where the Prophet ﷺ says, "Satakunu fitnatun." There will be a fitna. A fitna is a trial, a test, a tribulation. يُصْبِحُ الرَّجُلُ فِيهَا مُؤْمِنًا. That yusbihu sabah, in the morning, a man will wake up, or a woman will wake up, mu'minan, as a believer. وَيُمْسِي كَافِرًا. And that person then will go to bed as a disbeliever. So what happened in the hadith? The Prophet ﷺ saying there will come a time where there will be a great tribulation. And it will be so great that the believer will wake up in the morning as what? As a believer. And the tribulation will be so great that there will be such a rapid loss of faith that by the time they go to bed, they've lost their iman. They've lost their iman. So this year is also a commentary on the future. Because with materialism, You might have a weakened faith, but you can still be a believer. You can still be mu'min, Muslim, attesting to one God, attesting to the prophets, attesting to Qiyamah, attesting to heaven and hell. You can still have it in your heart, but you have a spiritual weakness, so you attach to this dunya and you forgetful perhaps, neglectful perhaps. But if I'm going to ask you, do you have iman? You say, yes, I believe. So it may not be like a perfect and complete iman, but might be some form of iman. So in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ is saying that at the end of time, or towards the end of time, even that iman will be removed. People will go to bed believers. They will believers their whole life, but in a rapid amount of time, they will lose their faith. They will lose their faith. I believe that we are entering this phase. I believe up until now, since the time of the Prophet ﷺ, until now, people generally didn't question iman. If you are over 50 or your parents' generation, 50 years ago, no one was questioning iman. People weren't perfect Muslims, but no one said, no Muslim in the Muslim society asked questions about, does Allah exist? Is the Quran real? Those weren't the questions. People had sin and they were neglectful and they didn't have enough education and all of those things, but iman was always strong. Iman was always strong. In our time now, I believe that we're facing this time. And I genuinely believe that we are on the brink of the loss of many, many Muslims. And if you want to see where we're going, you generally look towards those who are ahead of us in the trend. One of the countries ahead of us in the trend is the US. In the US, in the latest survey, 20% of those who are born Muslim no longer identify as Muslim. Is that a small number or a big number? 20% is huge. 20% is huge. I mean, 20%, I don't know how many Muslims there are. Say, for example, we are 2 million Muslims here. That's 400,000 people born Muslims saying, I no longer identify as a Muslim. And I think if we don't wake up, this is not going to happen. It's already happening. It's already happening because we get the cases. I get the call from the father that says, my child did Hafidh al-Quran, but now they're on some debating club and now they start to question their iman. It's not going to happen. It is happening already. It is happening every day. And we're seeing it. We see it firsthand. We speak to these individuals. So I think this, for me, is a crisis in the making. Because the world of the youth is a different world from the world of the old people. The older people don't question the iman. If you're over 50, 60, you don't really question your iman. If you're 15, 16, 17, early 20s, there are lots of questions you're asking yourself in the quiet moments. And if you're not in a good space, if you don't have good company, it's a small step for you to say, I was born Muslim, but I no longer identify as a Muslim. And we are not far away from that. It's happening and it will increase and it will increase. It's like an inevitability because it's happening already in other spaces. Especially because our kids are entering into education systems that are fundamentally actually opposed to faith. Why we'll come to later, but they're fundamentally actually opposed to faith. Like the school system is fundamentally opposed to faith. Not in explicitly we don't want you to be Muslim, but in the content of the teachings. In the content of the teachings, there's an opposition to faith. In the content of what you're watching on Netflix, there's an opposition to faith. You with me? There's an opposition to faith in everything. In our politics, there's an opposition to faith. And if you schooled more and more in this, and your home isn't strong, it's a short step for you to lose your iman. It's a very, very short step. Okay. So that is where we are at. And then there's an additional part of the narration where the Prophet ﷺ says, "Illa man ahyahu Allahu bi'ilmin." Illa means what? Except Man ahyahu Allahu, the one that Allah has ahya, from the hayy, life. Allah has given him life, or he has given her life, bi'ilmin, with knowledge. With knowledge. That this is the only solution. That knowledge and truth is the only solution. Okay. So if you take the combination of those two ahadith, the first hadith spoke about love of this world, worldliness, materialism. The second hadith spoke about the loss of faith. The loss of faith. So what I want to come to is that Islam, let's start at the base level, is two things. Islam at the base level is two things. On the left, Islam is faith, iman. That you make shahada that there is one God, one Allah. You make shahada that you believe in his messengers and his angels and his books and the last day and the divine decree. You affirm inwardly. You may express it on your tongue, but you affirm faith inwardly. That's the first part. When the Quran speaks about it, it speaks about innal ladhina amanu. Amanu. This is the first part. Then the other part of Islam is that you manifest this faith on your limbs. You manifest this faith on your limbs, whether it is in the form of shahada with your tongue, or salah with your limbs, or fasting with your being, or hajj, or paying zakah from your wealth, or living your life in the way you trade, in the way you marry, in the way you divorce, in the way you interact according to Islam. That's in the realm of action. So therefore we have innal ladhina amanu wa amilu salihat. Always in the Quran you find this coupling, this pairing. Why? Because this is going to be the components of the believer. They are inwardly submitting and they are outwardly submitting. Inwardly with iman, outwardly with their actions. And this you'll find in the hadith Jibreel, which I won't go into too much detail with, but you'll find this in the hadith Jibreel. And then you have, which I would consider to be a combination of those two, which would be, which we call ihsan. And ihsan for me is almost like it's faith and action in one. It's when those two exist completely in the moment. Because even in the narration, where the angel asked the Prophet ﷺ, وَمَا الْإِحْسَانِ, and what is ihsan? The Prophet ﷺ says, أَن تَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ. To worship, and worship means that it's like normally like a physical action. كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ is like something which inwardly, as if I can see him, like, you know, like I have that state of presence. So it's this combination of faith and action, faith-infused action in that moment. It's qualitative. It's qualitative. And that's going to be ihsan. And those three make up Islam. That you have iman, you believe in Allah, the last day, the angels, the books, the messengers, the divine decree, that you establish the fundamentals, you establish prayer, you establish hajj and fasting and all of those, and that you have it in a beautiful manner. Meaning what? When you do make that salah, it's not something empty. It's something that my Lord is watching me. There's something inside of me that is aware. It's not just mechanical and empty and ritualistic. It is something which is real. And those three are what we call the thawabit. Thawabit means those things which are firmly established. Those things which are completely firmly established. So those are the three things. And then the hadith actually continues, and this hadith Jibreel. If you haven't heard about it before, it's basically a hadith where a man comes to the Prophet ﷺ wearing white, and he has jet black hair, and he has no signs of travel, and his Sahaba around the Prophet ﷺ, and he sits knee to knee with the Prophet ﷺ, and he says, "Ya Muhammad, akhbirni anil Islam." Oh Muhammad, tell me about Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ tells him about the 6 pillars of Islam. Then he says, "Sadaqta, oh you Muhammad ﷺ, you have spoken the truth." Then he says, Ya Muhammad, akhbirni anil iman. Iman is the faith. And he says, akhbirni anil Islam. Islam means the worship part of Islam. And then the Prophet responds with the 5 pillars of Islam, which is like Shahada and Salah and fasting and Zakah and Hajj. And then the man says, Sadaqta. And then the Prophet then they ask the Prophet, tell me about Ihsan. And the Prophet says, to worship Allah as if you see him, and if you can't see him, know that he sees you. And he establishes those 3 things. But at the end, he asked the Prophet a 4th question. He asked him, when is the end of time? And the Prophet says that the one asking doesn't know more than the one who's being asked. Meaning what? You don't know and I don't know. And then he asked the Prophet he asked the Prophet about, tell me about its signs. And in the signs, the Prophet speaks about the slave giving birth to a master, which is unusual. A slave which gives birth to his master. He speaks about the barefoot, naked Arabs who are going to build tall buildings, which is like unusual. Why? Because these are people of mud buildings and tents. Are they going to build some huge buildings? And what the Prophet is alluding to is at the end of time, things become strange. Things become inverted. Why? Because normally a slave doesn't give birth to a master. Normally a rural Bedouin person doesn't build a 100-story building. At the end of time, things become inverted. And inversion is the idea when falsehood becomes truth, when right becomes wrong, when normal becomes abnormal. And so in this hadith, if you can categorize in 2 sections, there are those things which are stable and permanent, which is what? Iman, Islam, and Ihsan. And they always have to be. But the container of the world will change, even to a state of inversion. This is the times will change, but that which is firm must always remain. And so we are definitely seeing some of those things. We're definitely seeing some of those things. So what goes wrong with the model? What goes wrong? Where are the Muslims falling short? So I'm going to focus on the bottom 2, which is faith and action. When it comes to action, what's the issue? The Prophet ﷺ is saying, they will come and they will feast on the nations. The nations will feast on the Muslims. And you will be many Muslims, but you won't act. You with me? The Prophet ﷺ is not saying you don't believe. He's saying you Muslims, but you're not acting. And what is the reason for you not acting? Is because you are attached to this dunya. You with me? So that attachment we call shahawat. Shahawat is like low desire, worldly desire. That shahawat means that you don't act even though you believe. Shahawat is when you don't act even when you believe. And all of us suffer from this to some degree. All of us at points in our life, we know what the right thing is, we believe in the right thing, but we don't do it because of a weakness within ourselves. That weakness could be attachment to this dunya, that weakness could be love of this dunya, that weakness could be love of fame, love of leadership, it could be the ego, it could be many things. But this is in the realm of shahawat. But if you ask the person who has shahawat, you ask the person, do you believe? They say, yes, I believe. You with me? You ask the person, you even have maybe a Muslim thief. He's stealing. He knows it's wrong. But ask, brother, do you believe in Allah? Yes, I believe in Allah. You with me? The fact that he's stealing doesn't mean he doesn't believe in Allah with that. You with me? The person who is basically maybe taking drugs or having intoxicants, you ask him, do you believe? I believe, but I need this. You with me? It's the shahawat. So it's going to be one aspect of where things go wrong. And that aspect has always been there. And that aspect is something which is like a daily struggle for all of us. We're all actually battling with ourselves to be better versions of ourselves. We're all battling with ourselves all the time. And then On the left-hand side, we have the idea of Iman, faith. So what goes wrong with faith? When do people start losing their faith? What happens? Give me an example of when people start losing their faith. You have a Muslim, and then they start losing their faith. Faith. What causes that loss? Anybody in class or in person?
No motivation or the wrong environment.
Online, yes, Bismillah.
No motivation or like the wrong environment, maybe.
Okay, good. Low motivation or perhaps maybe the wrong environment. What does the wrong environment produce?
It doesn't encourage you, and it doesn't encourage you to do better, so you don't have role models, and yeah.
Okay, but I don't want to speak about the realm of action now, like people being obedient, not obedient. I'm talking about people who actually start losing their iman. So Shamira says doubts. Like doubts is like what do people doubt? They doubt Allah. They doubt, does Allah really exist? They question their faith. They maybe experience a calamity in life. And how could Allah do this to me? You understand that? How could Allah do this to me? How could Allah take away my child? How could Allah take away my business? How can Allah Ta'ala, cause my marriage to end? They have these questions and it results in doubts. So shubhat is a shubha is going to be a destructive doubt. A doubt that starts destroying your iman. And this, what do you think is more serious? Which of the two do you think is more serious? Shubuhat or shahawat? Why? I agree with you, but why? Good, because yes. So shubuhat is like once you lose your iman, you lose your way. But shahawat, you can always repent, you can reform, because your internal compass is still aligned to truth. Maybe the limbs falter, the limbs do the wrong thing, but the heart still believes. So when the heart believes, the heart can correct the limbs. The heart can correct the limbs. But when you start thinking there's no God, or God's unfair, Allah's unfair, or you start questioning the prophets, or you start questioning the afterlife, then there's no recourse, like there's no corrective recourse, because you've given up on you've given up basically on the whole idea of truth. So for today's workshop, I want to focus on shubuhat. Meaning what? You need a separate workshop for shahwat. There's a separate workshop for ihsan, separate workshop for end of time. These are all different big topics in Islam. So the topic we're going to move to is specifically the idea of iman and shubuhat. Because I believe that this is where we're losing the battle. We're always going to battle with shahwat. People are always going to be tempted by the opposite gender, by intoxicants, by interest, by that's human condition since always. But it's very, very, very new for Muslims to start questioning faith in large numbers. It's very new. I don't know, in Durban, is it common? Or I don't know.
But there is a potential here then for once you can have doubts and those doubts are addressed collectively, the faith can be so much more powerful than it. So that question is like something we as parents go through between our friends and we discuss these kind of things quite often is if we insulate ourselves so much, then our faith is preserved, like in the parties and all that. But a faith that's not tested and unquestioned, like how does it withstand the world? So we've got children with non-Muslim schools and questioning that they go through, if it does go well with the right form and the right answers, it's much more stronger.
Okay.
So I think maybe here we might be insulated.
Okay, I'll repeat the comment maybe for the online students. So, our sister is saying that it's not as common in Durban. And there's basically two models. The one model is insulation, and therefore it's like untested faith, or isolation to some extent. And the other one's like integration, and then your faith is tested. I think maybe to ask the question differently, what do you assess the level of faith of the youth as? Do youth have strong faith in God? In general. Like I can tell you from a Cape Town perspective, I'm very concerned about the faith of the youth. Very concerned. Especially those who attend more expensive schools. Especially those. Because when you're in a poor community, the focus is different. Your struggle is different. You're struggling to eat, and you're struggling to have a job, and you're struggling to, you don't have a basic struggle. You don't have like time for like theoretical discussions and all of these things. So it's a different dynamic sometimes. But now when you're entering into the more expensive schools, when I speak expensive, I mean like non-Muslim private schools. It's a different environment, and I worry about I'm concerned about the level of actual iman, like of the youth. I'll come to the tested, untested part now, but I'm saying the very premise I'm asking is that what is the level of faith from the beginning?
Then once they were at this period, like all the clever people were not believing in God, and now it's, as you said, it's luxury of debating and intellectual gymnastics. And they never had questions before, so then it was just like the questions are only been answered in my life. Yeah, level of faith. I think 7 years back, this one is the same.
I think maybe I don't know, and it's hard to say much from this province, but generally speaking, is that when a society is more open, you have a better idea of where people are at, because people can speak openly. You with me? Where the society is open, people can speak openly, and you have a better idea of where they are at. Where society is maybe a bit more closed, where you can't speak freely, the problem can remain hidden. You with me? The problem can remain hidden until a time comes where someone can then be free. You with me? So I think that's also something to think about. That in a society, for example, if you're in a society where for you to say, I'm not sure the Prophet is really perfect. Like if you don't have space to say it, you might think it. And you might watch it and you might hear it all the time. But you will only voice it and start believing it when you have the space to express it and explore it. So sometimes these issues actually remain hidden. Yes. Yeah. So before I carry on, is that in Islam, when it comes to the realm of action, you are encouraged to follow a scholar. When it's not encouraged, you're required to follow a scholar. When it comes to the realm of action, meaning what? For example, maybe you live in Durban, then you are required to follow maybe the Hanafi madhab, because that's a group of scholars. So they will tell you how to act and how to perform. When it comes to iman, you are not encouraged to follow people. What do I mean by that? You don't say, I believe because my father believes. You with me? You don't tie your iman to another person. With iman, actually, you are encouraged to find faith on your own. You must establish faith. You yourself must believe. There's a very big difference between the two. Because when it comes to action, yes, we follow scholars and we get our guidelines from scholars, which is perfectly fine and acceptable and how it should be. But when it comes to iman, Iman can't just believe I'm a Muslim because I was born into a Muslim family. That's not actually true Iman. Because there's no solid foundation. Like, why do you believe? So just because you were born into a Muslim family, you believe? Do you really believe? Where I'm getting to is that in a society where the whole society believes and you're born into that society, then you don't think a lot about your Iman because it's taken for granted. You understand? So you don't think a lot about, but you do believe, but you don't give it a lot of thought. You know what I mean? In a society where there's such diversity and there's so many worldviews and so many things going on, you are going to have to at some point consciously affirm your Iman. Because you won't always be in a Muslim home in a Muslim society. One day you'll be free. You go live overseas. People are immigrating. You go live overseas. You live in a non-Muslim country. There's going to be no eyes on you. There's going to be no social pressure. You can do whatever you want. And if you haven't chosen Iman, then you will start shedding your Islam. So when it comes to Iman, in Arabic we say there shouldn't be taqleed in Iman. Taqleed means that you mustn't follow. You don't follow some. You must have Iman for yourself. Each child must choose Iman. And the parent's job is to rear that child to choose Iman. But in the end, one person cannot direct the Iman of someone else. Even the Prophet ﷺ cannot direct the Iman of someone else. He wanted to tell his uncle Abu Talib, just say Shahada on his deathbed, just say Shahada so I can have something on the day of Qiyamah. And he's the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Meaning what? Iman is an individual choice. Iman is an individual choice. And I think that's for me is an important takeaway for today, is that every person must choose Iman. Every person must choose Iman. If you don't get to that, then the person's Iman's at risk. Because if your Iman is based on social conventions and relationships, what happens when they fall away? What happens when they fall away? What happens when the kid goes to university and sits on res or in digs or whatever the case is? What happens then? Because all the pressure's gone.
This is for a point about tested and untested faith and everything. Your faith is stronger when it's actually tested or doubted in a sense. So how do you doubt? I mean, so when is that time that's good to do?
Yeah. So I think that the question was regarding testing your faith. So as much as possible, when you have children, is that all of us shouldn't aim to test our faith. What do I mean by that? If I'm an adult, I have Iman, I mustn't be so confident in my Iman that I'm willing to go anywhere and do anything and say I will still believe. Meaning what? I must be aware that I still need to maintain a good environment. I still need to have good company. You with me? Meaning what? Like, don't be overconfident in yourself. We are fickle beings. Our hearts are fickle. So as much as possible, I believe for children is that we first have to establish Iman firmly before we can even start the discussion about testing. And I believe that most of the youth have never really felt close to Allah. They perform Islam, meaning what they come to Jummah, they make salah, they perform Islam, like they do the acts of Islam, but have they been moved by their Lord? Have they shed tears? Most of the youth, I believe, haven't. And I base it on the fact that I do a lot of youth work. I mean, I run a school as well. So like in an actual, authentic, spiritual, like you feel close to Allah with that. So for me, with my own kids, I would personally not put them in a place of peril, because these are the years where I will take my time to shape them, because they are going to end up there anyway. But I'll prepare them in terms of my preparation. Like I'll prepare them, but I won't place them there. I don't know if you know what I mean. Like almost like I believe we need to have managed integration, not like a laissez-faire, just drop him in the deep side. I believe we have to have with our children managed integration. Okay, tomorrow I have a talk on parenting, but we have to have managed integration when it comes to kids. What I mean by that, you can't isolate your kids completely, nor can you just take your child and drop them in any school and just say, you know, you're Muslim, survive. You with me? You have to manage the integration with the broader society. You're a believer, okay, but you have people of other faith. Let's maybe join the sports club, maybe do some work. You know, like you have a positive integration with people. You're not going to drop your child at a nightclub and say, okay, no, this is all part of life. You know, go make the right choices while you're partying. You won't do that. So there has to be managed integration. And that might be different for different families and different places and so on. So it's a bit of a discussion with regard to it. But first, Iman must be established completely within the child. Okay. So that is just the kind of in the introductory comments, the introductory part. Are there any questions from the online students or comments before I go to the next section? The objective of the first section was just to highlight where we are focusing on. This part of Iman. That is where we are focusing on. Any questions from the online students? Or any comments from the online students?
Maulana, I just want to say that Maulana was saying that each and every person should choose Islam. Like you can't choose Islam for anyone else. And I was just thinking, like, how can you actually choose Islam for yourself if you don't really know anything about it? You can have a Muslim name and whatever, but do you know what's like in the Quran, what is Allah saying in the Quran and stuff? So I think yeah, that should be our first step, like seeking knowledge and things like that.
Yes. Alhamdulillah.
Salam Mulana.
Alaikum salam wa barakatuh.
I'd just like to comment on what you spoke about integration into schools and, you know, building faith first. We moved into a very small, very secular community, and with our kids going to different schools and that, you know, we created a good base for them. So Alhamdulillah, with getting into school, and they've had such a broad view of life and just, you know, different communities, and their love for the deen grew on its own. You know, their faith built in a way that I found they wouldn't have done it were they in a community that was very saturated with Muslims. So they actually taught us as parents who came from that old school of teaching and learning about loving Allah, you know, from your heart, then growing up with this fear of Allah, you know, that, you know, everything you do has to be in a certain way because otherwise you're destined for hell. And it's amazing that with the way our kids grew up in such a secular community with different religions, and that their love of Allah just grew so beautifully in a sense that they gave them, you know, it's a firm faith that they have. I marvel at the way I see my kids and their beautiful iman, you know. And yeah, I just wanted to bring that aspect in, that even if you live in different communities, you know, it's really what happens. It's just, you know, if Allah guides them, they get that full love in their heart, and you know, when they don't question a lot, they're quite firm in their faith. So Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, may Allah preserve their faith. That's why I'm saying that there's no blanket answers. There's different answers for different people, different families, different places. But the actual answer is, you must establish firm iman in your child. Meaning what? You can put your child in a Muslim environment and their iman could be weak.
Yeah.
And then you must make a plan. You must ask why. Is this the right kind of space for them? Is it the right kind of teacher for them? Is it the right kind of approach to Islam for them?
And I found going back to the cities, and I mean, I don't want to generalize, but I noticed that because you, like you say, you take it for granted, you're Muslim, and it's just one of those things, that your faith is, but I find the youth are, but they're questioning their faith because they get so easily taken in by new things or trends or something, that they tend to follow it so quickly, and that tends to erode their faith in a certain way, where they don't know the boundaries, to a certain point. And it's scary when I see the youth in some areas, and I really shudder, because I feel they really, they want to try something because it's fine, but at the expense of questioning their iman, if that makes sense.
Yes. So I think, again, I mean, I've worked with MSAs at schools, at non-Muslim schools, meaning your expensive schools. I work with MSAs. Myself and Zakaria founded the MSA schools in Cape Town. And even at you're going to find everything. You can go to a private school, you're going to find that few Muslims who, because they're in a non-Muslim environment, they become stronger Muslims because they're attached to it. And in the same school, I'm going to find others who have now shed the Islamic identity. You with me? Who don't want to identify as Muslim, who don't want to change their name, who don't want to speak a word about Islam. And so you're going to find both.
Yes.
And if I'm going to go to a Muslim school, and I've worked in Muslim schools as well, you're going to find those who are firm in faith, and you're going to find those who have no sign of faith, even though they're doing the performances of faith. So again, I think we must be careful with regard to generalizations. Spaces are different, schools are different, communities are different, suburbs are different. In the end, you must instill iman in your child. They must choose faith. It must make sense to them. And it's a complex question. And also there's lots of different flavors, and there's different approaches and methodologies. So I don't want to get too much into that detail. Just suffice to say that faith must be chosen by the child. And if your child is not choosing faith, then you need to make a plan. You need to do something that's going to change. But in my assessment, in general, there is amongst the Muslim youth, there's great weakness in faith, a great amount of questioning, and a great amount of doubt, and a great amount of just shedding the Muslim identity, because they're being offered a different identity, which is something else you can do, something else. You can be free. You can free yourself of all of these things, and we'll come to that now, inshallah.
When you think of it, this school thing, it's microcosm of also one nation where you live, whether you live in a Western country or a Muslim country. The same thing is that school, when you live in an Islamic school, you could be living in a Muslim country where your faith might not be. So you could be doing the external things of an action, but not have strong faith. Or you could go immigrate to a non-Muslim Western country, and you could go both ways, as you said, that in the school. So it's just like a sort of parallel. The second one was, you said you must always, when you need to give your children, you need to ask them, make them choose faith. Is that like a once-off, now you sit them down and what you believe in Allah, why do you believe in Allah? Is like that was just like a gradual process of shaping them.
I think we'll deal with the proofs a bit later as we move down, inshallah. Like in terms of, and I think it will answer the question more fully as we work out how do you know what you know. Okay. So the next part I want to come to is basically how do we find truth? How do we know what truth is? What is truth in Islam? Okay. So the question is, how do you know what you know? For example, here's on my desk. Here's a pen. You can see the pen here. And if I say the pen is red, is the pen red? Is a red pen? It's definitely red. Okay. And what if your perception of color is impaired, and you see the pen as green? Is the pen still red or is it green?
Still red.
Okay. So the question I'm coming to is, how do you know what you know? So I said this is a red pen, and I'm saying it like with probability or certainty. Certainly, I'm making a categorical statement. This is a red pen. How do we know what we know? This question here is one of the solutions in terms of doubts. Is one of the solutions. So the first thing is to understand what are the sources of certainty within Islam? The sources of truth, the sources of certainty. So, as a believer, we affirm that there is one God, one Allah. How we affirm it is a different discussion. So the question you asked me earlier about how, and that's more like an Aqidah discussion, which is like a different discussion. I won't get into it too much. But there are different types of arguments. But to answer, you're not going to take your child through like formal rational arguments and cosmological kalam arguments, because they're not at that level. You're just affirming in their heart that I'm a Muslim and I choose Islam. You know, but I mean, there are formal arguments for it. Okay, so how do we know what we know? So the first thing is that as a believer, we believe in divinely revealed knowledge. We believe in there's like a Lord, there's a God, there's a being. How you come to that being is a different discussion. But when you believe that being. MashaAllah, barakallah, Habib. MashaAllah, barakallah. This must be the Subhanallah. Bismillah, Bismillah. MashaAllah, I will serve a copy of a Sheikh by Hafiz Fudail, MashaAllah. So, Bismillah. MashaAllah. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Beautiful, MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. This is good coffee in Durban, alhamdulillah. How do we know what we know? So we affirm there's one Allah. How we affirm it is in the realm of the discussion of Aqidah. So that's a separate discussion, Aqidah and how you come to it. And there are a number of rational arguments which you study in the science of Kalam, which you come to the conclusion that there's one God. There's also the Fitra argument that we have natural disposition, and you can come to it through that basically. Those are going to be your, and there's also like a textual argument, but textual argument's a bit circular because you're trying to affirm the source of the text, and so there's a bit of discussion around that. But there's Kalam arguments around it. But let's come to the point now, because I'm speaking to an audience who is Muslim, who already affirms there's one God. We affirm it as Muslims. Now that divine being sent down two things. He sent down a book or books, but for Muslims the book, the Quran, and he sent down messengers, but for Muslims our main messenger is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So those are the two things. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam brings the book, yatlu alayhim ayati. He makes tilawa of the book, but he doesn't only make tilawa. He also yu'allimuhumul kitab. He teaches people the book. His words are wahi. His words are divinely inspired. So these are going to be the 2 points of communication between the divine and the human. The divine and the human. Is that the divine sends a book, which is his words, which communicates to us. And he sends a messenger, which is his explainer of the book, his carrier of the book, his role model of the book, his manifestation of the book. Kana khuluqul Quran. That is, khuluq is the Quran. Okay. And I think just on a side note, within Muslim academics at universities, especially Western universities, there's an attempt to separate the Prophet ﷺ from the book. There's a great attempt to cast doubt and aspersions on hadith, but it's a different discussion altogether. I'm just saying it's problematic for a number of reasons. But the Prophet ﷺ is the lens of the Quran. He is the lens of the Quran. Like if you ask me, through what lens do I read the Quran? I read the lens to the prophetic, through the Prophet's lens. How do I know his lens? I know him. I know how he lived. I know what he said. I know how he acted. I know what he said about the verses. You with me? That's his role, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He's there to teach you. He is the lens of the Quran. So I can't come to a verse and say, I understand this way, but the Prophet ﷺ understands a different way. You understand? That's going to be problematic. No. Then hadith comes to us, down to us, via transmission. Hadith comes to us via transmission. It can come down to us via mass transmission. Mass transmission means a lot of people heard it. Maybe on the Hajj of the Prophet, maybe like 10,000 people heard it, and then 10,000 people, like mass transmission. Like, for example, we can leave the example now, mass transmission. Or it could be through solitary transmission. You call it ahad, meaning what? 1 chain, 2 chain, 3 chains, limited chains. Those are the two categories of transmission. They're either mutawatir, which is mass transmission, or they ahad, which is limited transmission. If it is not mass transmission, but limited transmission, it results in probable knowledge, not definite knowledge. Remember, something which is 99% certain is still probable. You with me? It's not definite. Okay, that's a lot to digest, and I'm not going to get more into that because that's also a separate course on hadith studies and how that works. Okay, then you have the Quran, which is entirely transmitted by mass transmission. The Quran is completely by mass transmission, meaning what? Every Sahaba says, Qul huwallahu ahad. You with me? Every Sahaba, whether in Basra, whether in Egypt, whether in Kufa, whether in Medina, they say the same words verbatim because they all heard the same words from the Prophet ﷺ en masse in their hundreds and thousands, and they memorized and they wrote it down and they transmitted it, and comes to so many chains of transmission, it produces absolute definite knowledge. So when you open the book of Allah Ta'ala, there is empirical evidence that those are the words of the Prophet ﷺ that you can believe empirically even if you don't believe in Allah. Because that's what Orientalists do. That's what Orientalists do. They will believe that the Quran is the book of the Prophet, but they won't believe the Prophet is got revelation. No. There's a lot of concepts in a short amount of time. But each of these concepts have long discussions behind them, but just come to the conclusion that the Quran produces definite knowledge. So what am I discussing? How do you know what you know? If you're a Muslim, you believe in Allah. Why do you believe in Allah? Aqidah discussion. When you believe in Allah, you believe in divine books, you believe in divine messengers. You believe in angels. And then if you're a Muslim, you say, my book is the Quran, and my Prophet is Sayyidina Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I affirm all the rest, but I don't follow their law. No one says I'm on the madhab of Nabi Dawood. You with me? Because their Sharia doesn't apply to us. Our Sharia is the Sharia of Sayyidina Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but their truth and the truth of Sayyidina Muhammad is one. Meaning what? Each Prophet came with the truth. Remember the 2 blocks? A faith and iman, and a action. Each Prophet comes with the same truth. Why? Because truth can't change. Truth is immutable, unchangeable. There's one Allah. He is the creator. We're all going to go back to him. Whether you're saying that in the time of Nabi Dawood, you're saying that in the time of President Muhammad, it's the same truth. But what can change is action. They can fast differently. They can pray differently. They can give charity differently. That can change. So we follow the prophets because they all have the same truth. But we follow the Sharia of Sayyidina Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. You with me? So for us, there's no unclarity. It's all clear. Why there's so many religions? There's actually only one religion because they all have one truth. They may have different Sharias, and we call them, okay, that's going to be the people of Musa and they follow the Torah. But when you say follow the Torah, we mean in terms of their law. Their belief in the Torah and the belief in the Quran will be the same belief. Because it's the same thing. It's the same about creation, about where you're going to end up and all of those things. It's all going to be the same. Okay, so this is going to be the first thing, is that we believe that this creator, which is beyond time, beyond space, created us all, knows the past, present, future. He sends us a book and he sends us an explainer, a teacher. And then that gets transmitted to us. And when we have this mass transmission, it produces definite knowledge. It produces definite knowledge. So this is going to be the first point of knowledge, is divinely revealed knowledge. If someone doesn't believe in divinely revealed knowledge, they cease to be a Muslim. You can't say I'm a Muslim but I don't believe in the Quran. You don't get such a thing. You understand? Like, what are you doing? Nothing. Did you get just some new age God's in my heart kind of faith? You know what I mean? If you're a Muslim, you can't say I don't believe in the Quran, because that's the rules of the Muslim club. You said you have to believe in it. Okay. Any questions on that? So what I'm trying to establish, I'm trying to establish the fact that the revelation is a source of definite knowledge. So when we get in revelation, for example, the fact that we're all going to stand before Allah Ta'ala on the day of Qiyamah, is that probable or definite? It is definite.
Definite.
Because if you're going to go through the process, you affirm Allah, you affirm the Quran, you affirm the Prophet and comes to you in the book and says you're going to say it's definite knowledge. It is definite knowledge. And all of those components I spoke about, which components? The affirmation of Allah, the affirmation of prophets, the transmission, all of those have separate sciences behind them and discussions. I'm skipping over all of them because each of them require another day, another day. You with me? How do you affirm Allah? How do you affirm the prophets? How do you affirm the books? How are they transmitted? How do we know it's being preserved? All of those are all already discussed, and those are separate workshops, discussions. So I'm skipping all of that, all of that to come to the conclusion. Are you with me? Okay. The next thing is I asked you if the pen is red. Is the pen really red? Definitely. Yes. So you seeing this pen as red produces definite knowledge. Okay. Now, for example, if I'm going to release the pen, what's going to happen to it? Who of you think it's going to go up?
Not me.
So it's going to fall. But is that definite knowledge? It's definitely going to fall.
Yes.
Yes. Why? Because it's empirical. Because you can see it. You've seen it. You've seen the pattern all the time. So Muslims believe that what you see through your senses produces definite knowledge. What you see through your senses, sound senses obviously, produces definite knowledge. And what you see repeated as patterns in nature produces definite knowledge. We have a belief about it. I'm coming to the belief. We'll come to the belief about it now. Not belief. I'm talking about just the fact that it's going to, for example, if I'm going to drop this pen, if I'm going to release the pen, it's going to drop. For me, that's definite knowledge. The pen is not going to fly. Except if Allah causes it to fly, it's a different discussion. But the pen is not going to fly. It's not going to fly. So Muslims regard a certain category of science as definite. Undoubtedly definite. If you didn't do that, how would you read Quran? How would you hear hadith? Like how, if you cannot rely on your senses, how are you going to receive revelation? You with me? How are you going to say that revelation is different, but my senses are probable? But I can get the revelation through my senses. You're going to have a problem. You with me? When I hear the words qul, you all hear the word qul, say, huwa, he, Allah, ahad, is one. You're hearing something. There's words, there's like your senses are hearing something. Did I say that? I said that. You understand? This is the idea of empiricism being definite. Not scientific theory, that's a different discussion. Not scientific. I'm talking basic relationships in observation. Okay. However, with regard to this, Muslims have a fairly unique, I don't know unique, but a very specific belief about how it operates. Muslims believe that there are causes and there are effects. I release a pen, it drops. I light a fire, if I light a fire, it causes heat. What's the cause? The fire exists. What's the effect? Heat comes out. So Muslims believe that Allah produces the cause and Allah produces the effect, and Allah creates a correlation between the two. We don't actually believe that the cause causes the effect on its own. You with me? So let's go through a simple example, the classic example of the fire. Allah is the one that enabled the fire to burn. Cause. Allah is the one that creates the heat. effect. Allah is the one that establishes a correlation between fire burning and heat. And Allah is the one who can remove the correlation. You with me? Allah can simply say to the fire, Kuni bardan wa salam, as Allah says in the Quran. Become cool and peaceful ala Ibrahim, upon Ibrahim. You with me? Why? Because we don't believe actually that the fire causes the heat. We believe Allah causes the fire, Allah causes the heat, Allah causes correlation, and the correlation generally always remains because we can't live in a world of chaos. But Allah can come and Allah can remove the correlation, and that's called a miracle. You with me? So if I'm dropping the pen, the act of dropping, Allah is causing that. The act of the pen falling, Allah is causing that. Can Allah cause me to drop the pen, but the pen to go up? If you wanted to, you could remove it. You can remove the correlation and let the pen go up. You with me? You can remove the correlation if you want to. Like he did in Nabi Isa. We believe Nabi Isa went up in body and soul, which is unusual because normally you go down with gravity. Allah can remove gravity and let him go up. So this is what we believe. But we believe in scientific evidence as a point of definite knowledge. But we believe it in this way. This is not disagreed upon by any scholars. All scholars hold this. All scholars. You with me? All scholars hold this because this is our life. How else are you going to live? You know what I mean? How else are you going to like, like you can't imagine a world without relationships and causations and correlations. That's how life is. Okay. We're all good so far. We're just warming up, eh?
Something about the job of this is to perform miracles. So if this is a source of definite knowledge, doesn't this shape the whole premise that empirical observation cause and effect? The definite knowledge with the job will come with miracles to challenge that.
So not only that, even Allah can cause anybody to break it. Allah caused Umar radiallahu anhu, they were having a battle, I don't know where in Jordan. Umar was in Medina. He was able to tell them who's killed in the battle. Do you with me? That's the idea of a miracle. That's the idea of a miracle. Like a miracle we're not cut off from miracles. You understand? But the fact is that when the miracle happens, we recognize it as a break in the correlation, which Allah allows to happen. You with me? And that could happen on the hands of someone evil or someone good. Because Allah could allow it. You know what I mean? Allah could allow it. And that's going to happen at the end of time. Many things are going to happen which are going to be strange. So the correlation will be broken. I don't know if I answer your question.
The definite knowledge part of it. So if somebody performs miracles, that's not like it's definite knowledge of only this truth. It's separate.
You see, the definite knowledge is that you definitely have a cause, you definitely have an effect, and you definitely have a correlation, and the correlation definitely stays until Allah chooses to remove the correlation. That's how the whole logical sequence works. Yes, ma'am.
That is one that as ultimate cause of all causes. So if you do something like maybe worship, for example, it just never bothered me because for me it was like regardless of this how it happened, Allah's Father is the cause. So how that manifested, or is there an aqidah with anything that it actually manifested in such a way? I don't know if you can say that. Once you know that Allah is the cause of all causes, after that, how that manifests, it just always like very.
Okay, so it's a good question. So the question on evolution, I obviously can't spend long on it, but I can give you maybe the 2-minute summary of it. The 2-minute summary is that we have now two sources of knowledge here. We have divinely revealed knowledge on the right, and we have empirical knowledge on the left. And we affirm them both to be true. 100% true. Why? First of all, why do we affirm them both to be true? Because the one that revealed the text is the one that created nature. It's not a different one. You with me? Allah is the one who creates nature, who we call ayat. And Allah is the one who revealed ayat in the Quran. It's the same person, the same being. So the same being is not going to contradict himself. You understand? It's the same source. It all goes back to Allah. And Allah speaks often about that, about the ayat in the ayat in the Quran and the ayat in nature. On the horizons, in the heavens, on the earth, in yourselves, the ayat. So it's the same. So with regard to something fairly simple, actually, like evolution, is that, or let's call it the theory of evolution. What do we have? Is we have discoveries of artifacts, historical artifacts, bones and artifacts. And then we have a story that is layered upon it. You with me? Which is called the theory of evolution. So did we find the artifact? So we found artifacts. Maybe we find an artifact of a baboon and maybe a monkey and maybe a dinosaur, and we find all the artifacts, right? So the fact that we found, and like we dig up something, we see a bone, do we say, yes, it's the real bone? Yes, because my senses, you understand. I have to affirm, because if I can't say this is a book. You know, that's insanity. So if you find something, you must say, I found that thing. You with me? I found that thing. So you can affirm it with different knowledge. If they found those things, they'll found those things, found all of those things. Then what they layer upon it is a story. In science, you call it a theory. Our theory is different to probable. They're probably not different because there's a story they're making up about it. So that is something which is contestable. Even they themselves call it the theory of evolution. You with me? Once upon a time, there was a theory that the sun went around the earth. Many, many decades, centuries, that was a theory. Until later, it was changed. So the first thing I want to differentiate between empirical finding bones and studying them versus putting a theory on. Okay. Now, there are many theories. When you contrast the theory to revelation, you're going to end up in three positions. You with me? You find artifacts, or you find whatever, I'm not just any scientific thing. You come up with a theory. People even have obviously, like we have germ theory and disease theory, like lots of theory. So then you compare the theory to revelation. You come with three positions. Either revelation affirms the theory. Either revelation affirms the theory. Maybe revelation speaks about buoyancy. And then maybe you explain how buoyancy works, or whatever the case is. Or gravity. Gravity is also like a mystery store. You understand? So revelation affirms the theory. Or revelation contradicts the theory. Meaning what? Revelation tells you the first human being is Adam. You with me? And you say, no, the first human being is some amoeba, single cell that crawled out and became a bird, and you know, whatever your story is. See, now you have a contradiction between your theory and revelation. Is your theory probable or definite? Probable. Is your revelation definite or probable? So definite trumps probable. So on that theory, you have to say, okay, no, yeah. You have a probable theory, I have different revelation, therefore my different revelation trumps your probable theory. And there's going to be a whole lot of theories where revelation is silent about. You with me? Maybe you ask, do aliens exist? I go to the Quran, do you see the ayah of aliens? Does the Quran say aliens exist or don't exist? It's silent about it. Does the Quran speak about life in outer space in the universe and the galaxies? Not explicitly. You understand? There's no explicit verse telling you that there is life on other planets. So when you have a theory, yes or no, it's a theory. And revelation is silent, so revelation will just say, that's in the domain of theory, just leave that. That's fine, let's just leave that. You with me? So with regard to the theory of evolution, it's, the simple answer is that we affirm Nabi Adam as the first human being because that is what Allah affirms. Is it possible that before Nabi Adam, there was a gorilla and a chimpanzee? Is it possible? Yes. Is it possible before Nabi Adam there were dinosaurs? Is it possible? Is it possible? Yes. Did the Quran say there's no dinosaurs existed? No, the Quran was silent about it. So if you find a bone and it looks like this and you make it and you call it the name, and you can say, okay, I found the bone, I made the name, and that's it. Are you with me? So it's very possible that we found bones before that were pre-Nabi Adam. What's far-fetched about that? Are you with me? It is possible for us to find bones in a range and carbon dating, whatever the case is, but we are going to affirm that Nabi Adam is the first human being. He doesn't come from a monkey or from a, he comes from Allah. Allah tells you he created him from clay and he fashioned him and he blew into him a ruh. And that's going to be our point of definite knowledge. So we're going to stick to that But if someone says, oh, but what about the bones I found before then? I don't have a problem if I found bones before then. Why must I have a problem with that? But I have a problem with you overlaying a theory that contradicts my definite source of knowledge. Yes. So I don't know, that's a long discussion, but that's a summary of it. It's like a middle position. Why is the middle position? Because I'm saying there's space for science to have its theories. And that's how it's always been. There's space for science to have its theories, and we will allow science to have its theories until such a point where it contradicts explicit revelation. Then we will say on that particular point, no, Nabi Adam didn't come from a monkey. He was the first human being. Yes, but then science says, okay, but maybe they were like beings that were similar before him. That's fine. If there was being that had 2 hands and had 2 thumbs, that's okay. That's not a problem for us from an Aqidah point of view, because our belief is Nabi Adam is the first human being. And Allah doesn't speak about what comes before. Allah, the Quran is silent about it. It's a probable discussion based on available science and evidence. It's not generally what you'll hear from the minbar, because these are nuanced discussions. You hear me? These are nuanced discussions about actual belief. Normally from the minbar just hear, no, we don't believe in revelation. Nabi Adam is, what we mean by that is what is said is that human beings do not come from monkeys and amoebas. Human beings come from Nabi Adam, and Nabi Adam is created by Allah Ta'ala. The rest of the discussion, you can discuss all you want. Maybe a bird jumped out of a tree and became, maybe. How can I say yes or no if I don't know? You with me? How can I say yes or no if the Quran is silent about it? On what basis? I can only speak authoritatively, definitively when the Quran speaks about something. When the Quran is silent about something, I can't then extend the Quranic narrative because I want to. That would be irresponsible as a scholar. You with me? Because the Quran doesn't say that there weren't beings before Nabi Adam. No. In fact, the Quran speaks about the angels, and the angels say, why are you going to create a being that's going to spill blood? If you read the tafsir of that, they say the angels knew that because they were jinn before this, who spilled blood. So the Quran actually mentions beings that existed beforehand. So I don't know if that answers your question. We must affirm what the Quran says. What the Quran is silent about, we can't take a definitive position because it's not definitive. So no Muslim can say, for sure there's life on earth somewhere else. Or for sure there's no life on earth somewhere else. Not life on earth, life in the universe somewhere else. We can't take a definitive position until it becomes definitive. Meaning what? Until some green man comes here and says, I'm from Mars. And they say, oh, okay, this is empirical evidence. I go to his house there. I go visit him and I see all his community. Now I have different knowledge because I have my senses of witnessing a community in another planet. Now I can say, oh, definitively now based on my senses, which is the second category, I believe in it. But until then, if it's silent, it's still probable. It may be highly probable, maybe 50%, 60%, but that's the realm of science. And that's a moving discussion, because each generation has new science and makes the old science look very weird.
That definite knowledge from empirical is not in the same basis of Quranic definition of definite knowledge. That definite knowledge is always definite.
No, it's the same. No, it's the same.
So that can change.
No, we're not talking about the theory. We're talking about the observation doesn't change. You understand? So you must separate between scientific theory and just sensory perception. There's a fundamental difference between the two.
So you're saying that can change, your sensory perception can change.
No. No, your theories change. Yeah, you can see more things, but I'm saying the tool of perception doesn't change. I can see a pen, I can see a bottle, maybe I can see the tool still produces different. When I see the pen, I see it as red, it's definite. You with me? It's not less definite than Jannah. Do you with me? It's definitely true the pen is red. You understand? It's not less. And that's why Allah is telling you to look at the ayat of nature. Allah himself is telling you, look in the ayat of nature, because the ayat of nature is definitely true. You're going to see something and you're going to also have some rational conceptions about it afterwards. You with me? Well, you understand what I mean? You can see different things, but the tool itself is different. Because if the tool was not definite, how are you going to say the Quran is definite? Because you're using the tool to read the Quran and to hear the Quran. So if you start questioning the tool, you know what you're saying about revelation, your ability to receive revelation, you're going to create problems on that. Okay. Online students, I can't see your faces or I can't hear you, so I don't know if you guys are okay there, because can I also just have a caveat? What I say in the workshop can't be taken out of context. Like this is a 3-hour workshop. You can't take like one small clip out of context because that's going to create issues. Because I'm explaining like a complex theory. So just for the online students, and sometimes the problem is that people understand different things in different ways when I'm speaking, especially online. Sometimes more difficult. So if you have questions, rather ask the question, and I'm comfortable to address it. But I just want to make sure that everything's okay with you. Okay. Now we come to the third one. The third one is rational knowledge. Okay. Okay, let me ask you a question. In my house in Cape Town, have you seen my house in Cape Town? No. So you haven't seen it, right? You haven't seen my house in Cape Town, right? Okay. So one day I was locked out of the house, and then I decided, no, I can't get in the house. I'm going to run up and I'm going to jump through the keyhole and get inside. And then I ran and I jumped through the keyhole and I got inside the house. Normal keyhole. Am I telling the truth? Am I definitely not telling the truth? Or?
Not telling the truth.
Oh, you didn't see it?
You said it's a normal.
Did you see the ayah of it? Did you get the ayah of me jumping through the keyhole? No, there's no ayah about that. You didn't see it. So how are you coming to a definitive conclusion if you haven't got an ayah about it, divinely revealed knowledge? You haven't seen it, empirical evidence. How are you making a categorical statement that I didn't do it?
I've seen normal keyholes and I've seen your size.
Okay. And then, so?
So you can't put to a normal keyhole.
Okay. Okay, but I'm saying you haven't seen you haven't seen that scene.
Oh.
So how do you know that's true? Like that scene you haven't seen. So it's definitely not true. So it's definitely not true. Why? Because it's a rational conception. Okay. And then I jumped in the keyhole and then I went to sit on my couch. My couch doesn't occupy time or space. My couch occupies no space. And I had to sit on my couch. Is that true? My couch occupies no space. What am I saying? I mean, like, for example, this remote here occupies space. It's occupying this space. I'm saying I sit on my couch, and my couch doesn't occupy space.
Must be an imagination.
Must be my imagination. Even if it's my imagination, how can you imagine that? Can your mind imagine that? Can your mind imagine me sitting on a couch that doesn't occupy space? I'm not saying I'm sitting on nothing. I'm saying I'm sitting on my couch that doesn't occupy space. Can your mind imagine it?
The mind can imagine it.
Eh?
The mind can imagine it.
Mind can, so Auntie Bismillah, tell me, Auntie Mahmouda, what are you imagining, Auntie? Hear this.
Sheikh, the mind can imagine things that is not real.
Auntie Mahmouda, I want to hear what you imagine when I say I sat on my couch. I did sit on it. It exists, but doesn't occupy space. What picture does your mind form?
Like you it's something in the air. It's not on the floor. It must be in space. But it definitely, if Sheikh say it's not occupying space, then it must be the mind space that it's taking.
No, I'm not imagining it. I'm saying I sat on it. You with me? It's not in the realm of thought, it's in the realm of reality.
Yes, Sheikh, I can't believe that, Sheikh.
You can't, but you haven't been to my house. The whoop is you haven't seen my couch. You first didn't see my keel, now you didn't see my couch. But you
Sheikh, for
denying
me,
it.
it's
Why are you denying it?
unbelievable. It's
It's
unbelievable
not
for me.
based on revelation.
No.
It's not based on empirical knowledge. Because it's based on a rational conception. What's
Mm.
mashallah. Welcome, mashallah. It's based on the rational conception. What's the rational conception? An object that by definition exists physically and has 3 dimensions. By definition, it does that. Can't exist without those dimensions. The couch, which by necessity requires 3 dimensions, requires to be, you have to have a height and the length and the breadth. It requires that to be a couch. You with me? To be an actual couch. So you can't say something which requires 3 dimensions exists without 3 dimensions. You with me? Because your mind can't bring together 2 opposite things. It creates impossibility in your mind. You with me? These are examples of rational conceptions. These produce definite knowledge or probable knowledge? It definitely, I definitely, it definitely can't be true. What I said can't be true. You're making a statement saying what I'm talking is nonsense. I didn't jump through my keel. Even though you haven't seen my keel, I definitely didn't jump through my keel because a large body cannot go through, like normal speaking, a small body. A large body which is solid, obviously liquid is different, solid cannot go through a small opening. Like rationally, your mind can't conceive of that. Okay. And then, as I sat on my couch, it didn't occupy time or space. I watched my TV, and my TV had no beginning. It always existed. Can your mind picture a TV that was never made? Why not? What's your mind telling you? What's your mind telling you? Your mind is telling you that the physical object must have a beginning. Something must produce a physical object. You can't say there's no beginning. You with me? Therefore, Allah tells you, look at the skies and look at the heavens and look at the trees and look at everything. Why? Because it must have some emanation. It can't just exist. You with me? Physical objects just don't exist like that. They need something to put it into existence, like a catalytic experience to put it into existence.
Must have a creator.
What's this?
They must be created by.
They must be created. And that's the whole point. How did you know that? It's a rational conception. Because your mind struggles to think, how did it? Okay, I'll give you a simple example. Chicken and egg. There's a question about what came first, chicken or the egg. Does your mind goes chicken, egg, chicken, egg, chicken, egg, chicken, egg, chicken, egg, chicken, egg, chicken, egg. Does your mind tell you at the beginning there must have been something? Or can we go chicken, egg, eternally backwards? Infinitely backwards? Are you with me? Can your mind keep going chicken, egg, chicken, egg? What does your mind tell you? No. There must have been something at the beginning. How do you know? You didn't see it. It's a rational conception. Because your mind cannot conceive of infinity in reverse. Okay. These are advanced, these are like advanced, like logical propositions and rational knowledge, but they are definite. Everything that you told me now is definite. I definitely did not jump through my keel. You're telling me I'm lying. You understand? I definitely did not sit in my couch that has no dimensions. I definitely did not watch my TV that has no beginning. How did you come to all of that? Through your rationality. Sound rationality produces definite knowledge. Sound rationality produces definite knowledge. That's one of the ways you come to the fact that Allah exists. Because Allah tells you, look around. Where do you think this came from? Do you think it came from each other? Do you think it came from nothing? Where did it come from? Your mind cannot even conceive a phone coming from nothing. You understand? If your mind cannot conceive a phone because, okay, it's technical and, it's designed. But what about nature? It's infinitely more complex than a phone. Do you with me? It's a rational conception. Okay. So I won't get to, and I'll just end with this, inshallah, because this is a whole long discussion in Kalam. But in the end, your mind comes to 3 rational conclusions. Your mind comes to the conclusion of what must be. So your mind tells you, for example, a physical object must have a beginning. A physical object must have a beginning. Because your mind can't conceive of something that doesn't have a beginning that's physical. Your mind tells you of what can't be. A physical object that doesn't occupy time or space. A large object going through a smaller opening. 2 material things existing in the same space at the same time. These are things that your mind says no, can't be. And then your mind has a whole lot of stuff that says could be. For example, can you imagine a world without this red pen? Yes. You can imagine a world without this red pen. Meaning, well, this red pen doesn't have to be. Well, it could be. Okay. In Arabic, you call this wajib, mustahil, and mumkin. Wajib means must be, mustahil means can't be, and mumkin means can be. These are long discussions which I'm summarizing in the briefest form. So if you have it's not fully clicking, it's okay. The point I want to get to is the end point, and maybe we'll take a little break after this. The end point I want to get to is that as a believer, these 3 blocks produce definite knowledge. What are these 3 blocks? Divine revelation produces definite knowledge. Your senses produce, sound senses produce definite knowledge. And the sound intellect produces definite knowledge. Because that sound intellect is how you come to know there's Allah. How else you can know there's Allah? You with me? You can't say, oh, but there's an ayah that says Allah exists. Oh, but we're saying, does Allah exist? We can't look at this book first because they're going to win a circular argument. And that's how you produce definite knowledge. These are the three pillars of
existence of the world.
Yeah. For example, does your mind say that the world must exist? Or if Allah chose, you could have made it not exist? Like this object can and can't exist. So with the world, could Allah have chosen not to create the world? Could have. Could he have chosen to make the world differently, squares and people with 10 arms? Yes. You understand? So our existence here is not different. It's not necessary. The only necessity must be being actually is Allah. You with me? Actually, everything else is actually not must be. So those are all the Aqidah discussions that we have. Okay. In the next part, I'm going to show you how all 3 of these are destroyed in the modern world. All 3 of these pillars are removed. And that's why we have confusion. Because basically everyone in history, it happened in sequence. First it happened until from the time of okay, I'll start the discussion with Nabi Ibrahim just because it's easier. But from the time of Nabi Ibrahim until the 14th century, we had divinely revealed knowledge. The 14th century, that is removed. From the 14th century until the 20th century, we have observational knowledge, and then at the end of the 1960s, that is removed. And along with rational knowledge is removed. So in the 20th century, none of these count as definite knowledge. Not in the 21st century. How? I'm going to discuss how. But I want to see the departure point. The departure point is why do you believe, and this is why you believe. This is how you affirm truth. Yeah. So for example, like a simple thing like gender. Where would I find gender in these 3 blocks? Okay, let's just say, let's say sex rather, because sex and gender is a long discussion. Meaning, what does Allah affirm males and females? Yes. Allah says, we made you males and females. So in divine knowledge, I find reference to the fact that there are 2 genders. Allah doesn't mention a third. Allah mentions 2. This is called 2 sexes. Gender is a long discussion. 2 sexes Allah mentions. There's a male sex and a female. وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرِ كَالْأُنْثَى وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. Long discussion. We'll come to it, inshallah. You're with me. So that's going to. Then I go to discovered knowledge. What do I find? Biologically, I find 2 categories. I find a male category and I find a female category. They have chromosomal differences. You with me? In the middle, I find a minority that are called intersex, which have some sort of combination of the 2, but it's not that they're another gender, they're just a combination of the 2, because sometimes nature makes some strange mutations. You with me? So that middle category doesn't negate the fact that I have 2, it's just a mutation of the 2. So empirically I find it, empirically means through my senses, I find it through revelation, and therefore I come to the conclusion based on the revelation, which is matched with empirical evidence, that there are 2 sexes, male and female. Whether there are 2 genders, we'll discuss later on, but there are 2 sexes. Okay. You with me? Are you seeing how I'm operating with this? I'm checking because these 3 things cannot contradict. Why? Because their creator is one. The creator of the world, the creator of your mind, and the revealer of divine text is one. And therefore, it cannot contradict. If it contradicts, there's a problem in the way we're interpreting it. It cannot contradict. Because for a Muslim, there's no contradiction. A Muslim can never have a contradiction with science and religion. It just can't exist. Because if you have proper science, it means that you are studying the ayat of Allah Ta'ala properly. And if you have proper religion, it means you understand the revelation properly. And if you do those things properly, they can never contradict. How can they contradict? Because it's the same being. You with me? It's the same being. And that gives you confidence as a Muslim. It gives you supreme confidence that your deen has the answers. Not only from a revelation point of view, also from an empirical point of view, also from a rational point of view. That your deen will never produce a rational conception, which is impossible. No. Okay. I'll pause on one last thing. The fact that a man must marry a woman. Is it rationally possible that Allah could have made it a woman must marry a man must marry a man? Could be. If Allah chose to, He could have made any law He wanted. You with me? If Allah chose to, He could have made any law He wanted. A man should marry a man. Allah could have even made any law He wanted to. You with me? Rationally speaking, because He is the Rabb, and He controls His creation like He wills. You with me? So it's not a non-rational position. But where do I find the answer in this 3? In the revelation, because Allah tells you, okay, I created you. You could have done things in a lot of different ways, but I am telling you to do it in this way. You with me? And therefore we come to the conclusion that the man must marry a woman based on the revelation. And yes, we might look into empirical evidence, or we might look into that, and we might find some patterns in nature that this is how the survival of the species happens. And we might have scientific arguments around that. That's fine, but those are going to be more as an assistance to it. Okay. So our next part is I'm going to do, how much time I have? I'm going to try to go through 3,000 years of history in a few minutes, inshallah, in our next part, because the history is important. The history is very, very important in understanding how we got here. Because when you're born into the 2000s or into the 1900s, you think the world was always like this. You with me? You think the world, like our youngsters grow up and they grow up with the internet. They think, of course I can phone my friend, I can make a video call. They don't realize once upon a time people had to send a Morse code and a telegram, and they can't conceive of that world. So what you need to do is you need to move out of the container of your time to the container of the entire world to see the big picture. So we'll take a 5-minute break, inshallah. Unless we're back at let's make it at about 12 minutes past, inshallah. We'll be back, inshallah ta'ala. So we'll take a little pause for the online students, inshallah, and for the in-class students. Barakallah. Let me just annotate that here. Back at, what is this, 11:12.